Chapter 1, Section 3, Multiplying Integers. We're also going to do Lesson 4 today as well. Rules for multiplying integers. Now I should take a minute to note that generally speaking in math, you've always been taught your new approaches to problems the same way. You add them, you subtract them, then you multiply them, then you divide them. But we're going to work a little backwards when it comes with integers. We're going to start off learning how to multiply and divide, because after you learn how to multiply and divide integers, adding and subtracting integers is much easier. There's rules for multiplying and dividing integers that are applied to adding and subtracting integers. First of your rule says that a positive times a positive is equal to a positive. Next, we have a positive times a negative is equal to a negative. Well, let's get that out of our screen. How about we just exit there for now? A negative times a positive is equal to a negative. And a negative times a negative is equal to a positive. Now, when I was in elementary school, or not elementary, when I was actually in high school probably is when I was taught this. Maybe in middle school, but I doubt it. Probably high school for me. And one question always haunted me. And that was a question that chased me all the way up into my college years until a college professor actually answered it for me. And the question was, why? Why on earth is a positive times a negative, but a negative times a negative a positive? I mean, that's like saying, hey, two wrongs make a right, and two rights make a right, and a right and a wrong, well, that's just plain wrong. No, it doesn't work that way. Math is different. Let's take a look at some numbers. First thing you got to understand about math is everything is proven using patterns. They work these problems over and over and over again, looking at different ways to get to it until they have proven that every time you do something, the solution's always going to be the same. So first off, you got this 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is something you learned when you were in elementary school. 3 times 3 is 9. Very good. Now let's take and change one. You got 3 times 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 1. 3 times 1 is 0. 3 times 0, excuse me, 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 0 is 0. Now right here we got some patterns going on. First thing I want to ask you is say, okay, well let's see, let's get a nice good color here to go with. Let's do that bright red. In this column right here, what's going on? Each time you do it, you're subtracting 3. It's just going to be subtracting 1. So your next problem is going to say 3 times a negative 1, right? And that negative 1, you have to put it in parentheses. You see, these parentheses are kind of like a prison shield. He's negative. He's evil. And if we don't take and lock this negative 1 up, he's going to take that negative sign and use it to stab the multiplication symbol and kill it. So we have to put it in the negative jail just to protect everyone from around it. Back to the patterns. Over here, what is going on in this column? Well, in that column, each time you do it is minus 3. Minus 3, minus 3. So down here, what's it going to be? Minus 3. Therefore, we could say that 3 times the negative 1 is going to equal to what? Minus 3. Well, what's 3 times the negative 2 going to equal to? Minus 6. Why? Because the patterns have said so. Let's take a different approach. Now we're going to start off with the 2 times the negative 2. Now we know that 2 times 2 is going to be positive, and we have proven right down here that a positive times a negative is going to be a negative. Therefore, we can say that 2 times negative 2 is actually equal to negative 4. 1 times negative 2 is going to equal to negative 2. 0 times negative 2 is going to equal to 0. And now let's look at our patterns again. In this column right here, what are we doing? We are decreasing by 1, so the next problem here has to be a negative 1 times, in parentheses, a negative 2. If you don't put it in parentheses, you will lose points on your test, guys. Now, big question is, what is going on in this column? What kind of change is taking place? Actually, it is increasing by 2. Negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. So the next plus 2 is going to lead us to what? A negative times a negative equaling a positive. So negative 1 times negative 2 actually equals positive 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 equals positive 4. And so you have your mathematical proof that a positive times a negative equals a negative, and that a negative times a negative is equal to a positive. Do not try to move this into real-life applications and say that two wrongs make a right. Two wrongs do not make a right. Just because somebody slaps you upside the head doesn't mean you get to slap them back. Take a minute and try and solve that one on your own. See what you can come up with. Alright, hopefully you pause the recording to do that. Now when you work through this one, let's take it one little bite at a time. To solve this problem, we're going to start off with negative 2 times the negative 2, which is going to give us a positive 4. Then that other negative 2 right here, it ended up coming down right there. So now I've got 4 times the negative 2 is going to equal to a negative 8. Why? 4 times 2 is 8. Positive times a negative is a negative. So negative 8 is going to be your solution. Try that one out. Pause the recording and see what you come up with. Okay, hopefully you came up with something here. You've got this one, same way, take it a bite at a time. Your negative 2 times a negative 2 is a positive 2. In the last problem, we showed that a positive 4 times a negative 2 is going to equal to a negative 8. And each step along the way, you got everything else. This came to here, and that came to there. And now this comes to here. And a negative 8 times a negative 2. 8 times 2 is 16. Negative times a negative is a positive. So you get positive 16 for your answer. Easy math. Anybody can do this stuff. 1-4 is dividing integers. Really hard lesson. Are you ready? It works just like the multiplication of integers. Division of integers follows the same rules. So you could say that the negative divided by a negative would be a positive. Now with that in mind, take and pause the recording and work this lovely little problem. Alright, hopefully you did that. 16 divided by a negative 8. That's 16 divided by 8 is 2. Positive divided by negative is a negative. 2 times 5 is 10. Negative times the negative is a positive. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Positive divided by negative, positive divided by positive is a positive. And then 5 times 3 is 15. Positive times a negative is a negative. So negative 15 is your answer. Your opportunity to expand your mind today is worksheet 1.3 and 1.4, all on one page together there. And remember, in everything you do in life, try not to tick off the giant gorilla.
Sweet dreams. Good night.
Mm-hmm.